Jack Nolan never expected his life to take a detour through deep space. He was a man of small stages and smaller audiences, the kind of guy who strummed his guitar in dimly lit bars where the beer was warm and the applause was polite. His songs were about heartbreak and whiskey, and occasionally about his old half-broken hover bike that still made a whining noise like a sad cat. So when the invitation came, he assumed it was a prank. It arrived in a sleek metallic envelope that smelled faintly of ozone and mystery. The words shimmered across the surface in a language he didn't recognize but his ancient, battered smart device held together with duct tape and hope helpfully translated. It the Royal Court of Velia formally invites Jack Nolan of Earth to perform a song before Her Radiance Queen Saw. Transportation will be provided formal. Where optional, no weapons, no pets, no refunds. Jack read it 3 times. Scratched his head, then read it again. Well, he muttered to his empty apartment. If this is a scam, it's a pretty creative one. I've seen worse. He paused that time. I bought a genuine Martian moon rock from a guy behind a spaceport gas station. Still tops the list. The invitation wasn't a scam. 3 days later, he stood on the docking bay of a ship so smooth and polished it looked like a moonlit sea. The pilot, a tall bird-like alien with feathers that shimmered in gradients of violet and gold, barely acknowledged him. Beyond a curt nod and an annoyed flick of one wing, "Don't touch anything," the pilot squawked. Jack raised his hands. "Wouldn't dream of it. Last time I touched an unfamiliar control panel, I turned off a public restroom's gravity field. It wasn't pretty." The pilot didn't laugh. Jack sighed and leaned back, watching the stars blur past the window as they shot through the void. The journey felt both instant and eternal. He half dozed, dreaming of Earth, then jolted awake when the ship hummed to a gentle stop. The air outside smelled faintly of honey and rain. Velia wasn't what he expected. He'd imagine the usual alien world, cliché as endless deserts, toxic skis, maybe some ominous purple lightning for ambience. Instead, the city unfurled beneath him in sweeping towers of living crystal, glowing softly from within like the heart of a gem. Bridges impossibly thin and shimmering arched over canals filled with water that glittered in shifting colors, reflecting the sky. 2 suns, one gold, one a dusky red. A welcoming committee waited on the platform. They looked human enough, though their skin had a faint iridescent sheen, and their ears were long and elegantly pointed, adorned with delicate chains and tiny, glowing gemstones. Jack whispered to himself, "Great, I've been invited to Middle Earth in space." The Queen wasn't among them. Instead, a man, or what Jack assumed was a man given the flowing robes and particularly judgy expression, stepped forward. His voice was smooth and cool like a perfectly rehearsed sales pitch. "You are Jack Nolan of Earth." Jack grinned in the flesh. "Well, technically carbon and water, but who's counting?" The man didn't blink. Jack's smile faltered. "Tough crow eye." "I'm High Minister Dial," the man continued. "You will perform before Her Radiance this evening. Your quarters have been prepared." "Great. Hey, quick question. Do you guys serve coffee here, or am I about to find out what passes for caffeine on this planet? Because last time I tried alien coffee, I hallucinated that I owed money to a sentient toaster." Dell's expression didn't change. Jack sighed. Again, he was led through glittering halls lined with tapestries that seemed to shift and move when he wasn't looking. He swore one of them depicted a giant squid wrestling a spaceship. Another seemed to show a figure that looked suspiciously like him, standing beside a tall, elegant woman with a crown. Jack blinked and looked again, but the image was gone. His room was larger than his entire apartment back on Earth, with a bed so plush he was half convinced it would eat him if he lay down. He wasn't wrong when he sat on it. The mattress shifted and adjusted to cradle him, perfectly purring softly. "You're too comfortable," he muttered at the bed. "That's suspicious." The bed purred louder. Jack gave up before he knew it. Evening arrived. He was dressed in what could only be described as the fanciest robe he'd ever seen, all flowing silver fabric and embroidered constellations. He looked like a disco wizard. The throne room was even grander than the rest of the palace. Great pillars of crystal arched to the ceiling and light refracted through them, painting rainbows across the floor. The court was assembled, dozens of Verlands, their eyes shimmering with curiosity and caution, and then there was the Queen. Queen Sa didn't sit on her throne so much as she seemed to belong to it, like it was grown around her. Her hair fell in soft waves the color of moonlight. Her skin gleamed faintly, and her long, delicate ears were adorned with intricate gold chains that chimed softly. When she tilted her head, her eyes, though her eyes were the color of twilight, deep and endless, and when they met Jack's, he forgot how to breathe. Well, Jack murmured under his breath, "If this is a dream, my brain deserves an award for production value." Sa smiled. It was a small, knowing smile, and it sent an unexpected warmth through him. The High Minister stepped forward. "Jack Nolan of Earth," he intoned. "You may begin." Jack cleared his throat, voice dry and scratchy. He leaned into the microphone, or whatever alien equivalent they had, and said, "Right, so no pressure, huh? Just a casual performance for an entire royal court on a distant planet. Totally normal Tuesday." The court stared. Saw tilted her head again, curious. Jack took a breath, and he began to sing. Jack wasn't sure what song to sing at first. His mind raced through his usual repertoire: breakup, ballads, old Earth classics, and one ill-advised attempt at space country that he vowed never to repeat. But as he looked at Queen Sa, something shifted inside him, the way she watched him, her head slightly tilted, ears adorned with delicate golden chains. That caught the light made him feel like he wasn't just an entertainer anymore. He was something else, something more. So he went with his gut. He picked a song that wasn't flashy or complicated, just raw, honest, a song he wrote years ago after a particularly bad breakup, when his heart felt like a broken engine, sputtering on fumes. It was about longing, about finding home in someone else. The first chords echoed through the grand hall, the sound bouncing off the crystalline walls. It was richer than he expected, like the room itself wanted to help him sound better. The palace seemed to hum along, harmonizing with the notes. Jack decided not to question it. This was an alien planet after all. Maybe architecture had a backup singer. His voice started off a little shaky, nerves tugging at him, but he found his rhythm fast enough. He always did. The Queen's gaze didn't waver. Jack tried not to focus too hard on that. Nothing killed a performance faster than locking eyes with a beautiful woman who might also have the power to vaporize you if you hit the wrong note. As he sang, he noticed something strange. The air felt heavier, warmer, like the room itself was leaning in to listen. The Verlands weren't just watching, they were still, utterly, perfectly still. Even the High Minister, who Jack assumed was born with a stick lodged somewhere unpleasant, looked almost impressed. Jack never wanted to let a moment pass without a joke, added a little smirk between verses. "You know, if you guys like this one, wait until you hear my power ballad about running out of gas in orbit." Real tearjerker. A few Verlands blinked in what might have been amusement. One made a sound that Jack optimistically interpreted as a chuckle, though it could have just been a cough. But the Queen, she smiled, a real honest smile, small but unmistakable. Jack's heart did an unscheduled somersault. He powered through the final verse, voice steady and strong. When he hit the last note, the sound hung in the air like it didn't want to leave, and then silence. The room didn't explode into applause, not immediately anyway. For a second, Jack wondered if he'd accidentally committed a galactic felony by choosing the wrong song. Maybe he just serenaded them with their version of the national anthem. Wouldn't that be a hell of a diplomatic incident? Then the Queen rose to her feet. The chains in her ears chimed softly as she moved. Her voice, when she spoke, was warm and melodic. "Your song, to the heart of this court and my own." Jack, never W to handle sincerity, gracefully scratched the back of his head. "Well, I aim to please. Glad I didn't accidentally play space cowboy blues instead. Pretty sure that one's banned in 3-star systems." A ripple of laughter moved through the crowd. Real laughter this time. Jack felt the tension in his shoulders ease a little. The Queen stepped closer. Her eyes never left his. "Jack Nolan of Earth," she said, her voice softer now, "your song was more than a performance. It was a gift, when I will not forget." Jack, feeling bold and maybe a Little lightheaded from the sheer surrealism of the situation, gave a half-bow anything for the queen, but if I'm being honest, I think the acoustics in this place deserve half the credit. She laughed, a light chiming sound that made Jack's chest ache in a way he didn't expect. He wasn't sure whether that was a good sign or a really dangerous one. The High Minister stepped forward, his face carefully neutral. The Queen has been moved by your offering, he said, though Jack caught a flicker of something in his eyes, surprise maybe. Even approval. You will be given quarters befitting an honored guest. The Queen may request your presence again. Jack raised a brow. Does that come with breakfast? Because I'm pretty sure I haven't eaten since I left Earth, and I'm about 3 jokes away from passing out the court. Didn't quite know what to do with that, but Saw laughed again, and that seemed to be enough to keep the moodlight. Jack was led away through corridors that shimmered like frozen starlight. His guide was a short, nervous-looking Velian who kept sneaking glances at him like Jack might burst into song again at any moment. So what do you guys eat around here? Jack asked, trying to fill the awkward silence. Please, tell me it's not sentient. I had an incident with a self-aware salad. Once we're not on speaking terms anymore. The guide made a noise that was either a squeak or an attempt to smother a laugh. Jack considered that a win. His new room was absurdly luxurious. The bed looked like it was woven from clouds, and there was a view of the twin suns setting over the distant mountains, turning the sky of molten gold and crimson. Jack dropped onto the bed with a groan, the mattress conforming perfectly to his shape. It let out a low, pleasant hump. He poked it suspiciously. You're not alive, are you? Because I've had enough surprises for one day. The bed didn't answer. Jack took that as a good sign as exhaustion tugged at him. His last thought was of Sarah's smile, warm, genuine, and somehow more dangerous than anything else he'd seen on this strange, beautiful planet. He had a feeling his life had just gotten a whole lot more complicated, and knowing Jack, he'd probably make it worse before it got better. Jack woke to the sound of chimes, soft, melodic, and persistent enough to make him groan into the ridiculously comfortable pillow. His brain, still foggy with sleep, took a moment to remember where he was. Not his cluttered apartment on Earth, not some rundown spaceport motel with questionable stains on the ceiling. Nope, he was in a lavish guest suite on an alien planet, because of course he was. He sat up slowly, the bed sighing in protest beneath him. Okay, that's still weird, he muttered. Beds shouldn't sigh. The chimes didn't stop. They seemed to be coming from the door, which shimmered faintly whenever the sound rang out. Jack swung his legs over the side of the bed, wincing as his bare feet hit the cool, smooth floor. He spotted his shoes cleaned and neatly placed by the bed, and tugged them on before shuffling toward the door. The moment he touched it, the surface rippled like liquid metal and vanished, standing there looking as tense as a man waiting for a dental drill. Was the High Minister. Good morning, Jack said, voice Rue assuming it's morning times, kind of a loose concept. When you're lighty years from home, he squinted. You guys have coffee? Right. Dell's expression remained as carved in stone as ever. Her radiance request your presence. Jack blinked. Oh, now. Jack ran a hand through his hair, which stuck up in every direction. Cool, no pressure, just, getting summoned by an alien queen before I've had breakfast. This is totally normal, happens all the time. Blinked once slowly. Jack sighed. Right, let me just freshen up a bit. Don't want to look like I lost a fight with a wind turbine. A quick splash of water to the face and some half-hearted hair smoothing later. Jack followed Dial through the gleaming corridors. The Alice felt different this morning, quieter. Maybe even a little too quiet, so Jack ventured, trying to fill the silence. What's the Queen want to see me about? She a fan? Should I start signing autographs? Dee didn't answer, but Jack swore he saw the faintest flicker of an eye roll. He decided to count that as progress. They entered a smaller chamber, this time intimate, bathed in soft golden light. Queen Sa stood by a window, gazing out over the city. Her long hair caught the sunlight like strands of silver, and the delicate chains in her ears chimed softly as she turned to face him. Jack Nolan, she greeted, her voice warm. You woke late. Jack scratched the back of his head. Yeah, well, your beds are too comfortable. I think it tried to keep me hostage, the Queen laughed, really laughed. Light and musical Jack decided he liked that sound way too much, I wish to see. You, she said, her expression softening your song. It was unlike anything my people have heard. It stirred something in us, in me. Jack wasn't sure how to respond to that without sounding like an idiot, so he defaulted to humor. Well, if you like that, when you should hear my song about a bad first date with a telepath spoiler. She knew I was lying. When I said I liked her cooking, saw, tilted her head, amused. You are unlike anyone I have met, Jack Nolan. Yeah, I get that a lot, Jack said with a crooked smile, usually from bartenders. Right before they cut me off, her expression shifted, more serious. Now you did not know the weight of what you did you? Jack blinked. Wait, I mean I knew I was playing for royalty, which felt like a pretty big deal, but he trailed off at her expression. The song you chose, she said slowly, was not merely a performance, it was a binding. Jack stared at what now saw, stepped closer, her voice quieter, more intimate. In our culture, to sing such a song before the Queen with sincerity, with feeling, it is a declaration, a vow of the heart. Jack's brain stalled. He blinked at her, then let out a strained laugh. Oh no, you're kidding, right? This is a joke, classic alien prank, right? Like when Earth tourists go to Mars, and the locals convince them that glorp means thank you, but it really means nice. But Saw didn't smile. Jack's heart dropped into his shoes. You're not joking, no. Her voice was gentle but unshakable. You sang a marriage song, Jack Nolan. Jack stared at her mouth, working uselessly. I would. He let out a short, slightly hysterical laugh. Okay, but like no one told me there wasn't a pamphlet. Welcome to Velia, please. Don't accidentally marry the Queen with your sad guitar music. That would have been helpful. Saw looked at him with something that wasn't quite pity, more like understanding. It was not something we expected. No outsider has ever done such a thing. We did not believe it possible. Jack swallowed hard, his mind spinning. So what happens now? Am I stuck here? Do I have to start wearing a crown? I don't think I'm cut out for royalty. I spill food on myself a lot. Saw smiled softly. The bond is complicated. It is not a prison, Jack, but it is real, and the court will expect much to find much. Jack said wearily. Her expression grew sad, though her voice remained steady. There are those who will see you as an outsider, unworthy of the bond. Some will see you as a threat. Jack exhaled slowly. Right, of course, because nothing in my life can ever be simple. He paused, then added, please tell me your planet at least has beer. Saw laughed again, and despite everything, the confusion, the looming political disaster, the fact that he'd apparently gotten married without realizing it, Jack felt his chest loosen just a little. Yes, she said with a smile. We have beer. Jack grinned, though it felt a little wobbly. Well, at least I won't die sober. Jack wasn't entirely sure what the protocol was for processing an accidental intergalactic marriage, but he was pretty sure it didn't involve wandering through a palace corridor barefoot and muttering to himself. Yet here he was. Okay, he mumbled, running a hand down his face. So I sang a song, and now I'm married to an alien queen. Totally normal. Tuesday. This is fine. Everything's fine. The hallway, for its part, didn't seem inclined to disagree. It stretched ahead in smooth, crystalline arcs, glowing faintly with some kind of built-in bioluminescence that Jack was almost certain would make a fantastic mood lighting setup in a dive bar. He half expected it to hum a little tune or offer relationship advice. He took a turn at random and nearly walked straight into Dial, who appeared out of nowhere with his usual expression of exasperated dignity. Jack swore the guy had perfected the look of a disappointed middle school principal. Jack said, forcing a grin, my favorite high minister. You guys do surprise appearances. Now I got to say you'd make a killing on Earth. Reality shows. Dee blinked. Once the Velian equivalent of a sigh, her radiance has summoned the council. They wish to discuss the situation. Jack winced. Right, the situation, that's what we're calling this now, not the hilarious cultural misunderstanding that we can all laugh about later. Dell's expression didn't so much as twitch. It is not a laughing matter. Jack raised a brow. Okay. But counterpoint, it kind of is. Dell exhaled sharply, the closest thing to an emotional outburst Jack had seen from Him follow me and try not to speak too much no, promises the council chamber was. Less of a room and more of an architectural statement, it rose in a dome of shimmering glass-like material. Open to the sky sunlight poured through in beams of gold and violet catching on. Banners that hung from the upper level's intricate patterns that probably meant something profound, though Jack couldn't shake the feeling that one of them looked suspiciously like a space squid. The council members were already assembled, seated in a crescent around a central platform. Saw stood there calm and radiant, her long ears catching the light in a way that made Jack's stomach do a weird little somersault. Jack Nolan, the High Minister announced, though his voice managed to make Jack's name sound like an accusation. Jack gave the council a little wave. Hey, everyone, big fan of your whole planet thing. The silence that followed was thick enough to spread on toast. Sarah's voice cut through it, smooth and steady. Jack Nolan has committed no crime. One of the council members, an older villain with skin like tarnished silver, leaned forward. Yet he has bound himself to you, your radiance, intentionally or not. He has invoked the ancient right. This cannot be ignored. Can we in it? Jack offered, trying for a hopeful smile. I mean, on Earth you can annul a marriage if you wake up in Vegas, married to someone you don't remember. This feels like the space version of that. A younger council member spoke up, voice sharp. The bond is sacred. It is not so easily cast aside. Jack groaned softly. Of course it isn't. Saw stepped closer to him, her voice quieter now, but still carrying through to the chamber. The bond was formed in truth, even if unintentionally. To break it now would be seen as an insult, an act of rejection, not only to me but to the people. Jack blinked. Wait, so if I bail, that's not just an awkward breakup, that's what a diplomatic disaster, potentially war. Dell added, ever helpful. Jack let out a strangled laugh. No pressure, right? He glanced at Saw, his voice dropping a little. You sure you want to be stuck with me? I'm not exactly husband material. I leave socks on the floor. I eat snacks in bed. I once sang karaoke so badly a guy threw a shoe at me, and honestly I deserved it. Saw smiled, small but genuine. You are not what I expected, Jack Nolan, but perhaps that is not a bad thing. Jack exhaled slowly. Yeah. Well, guess I've been called worse things than unexpected. He glanced around the room. So what now? Do I get a title? Am I King Jack, Duke of Poor Life Choices, Lord of Bad Karaoke? One of the more humorless council members actually sputtered at that, though Saw laughed, a soft chiming sound that made Jack's heart do that annoying flip-flop thing again. The council will deliberate, Dale said stiffly. For now you remain, as you are a guest of the Queen. Jack raised a brow. Yeah, that sounds a lot like house arrest with extra steps. Dale's mouth twitched, which Jack was almost positive meant he was trying very hard not to roll his eyes. As the council adjourned, Jack fell into step beside Saw, so he said casually, how do Verlands usually handle this kind of thing? She glanced at him, amused. This has never happened before. Jack groaned. Of course it hasn't. They walked in silence for a moment before Jack spoke again. For the record, I wasn't trying to marry you. I was just trying to impress you. Saw stopped tilting her head and did. You? Jack blinked. Did I? What impress me? Jack opened his mouth, then closed it again, a slow grin tugging at his lips. Well, you haven't vaporized me yet. I'm taking that as a win. Saw laughed again, and this time Jack let himself enjoy the sound without overthinking it. He had no idea what came next, but for now he figured he could roll with it. Jack wasn't sure what was more unsettling, the fact that he was now technically married to an alien queen, or the fact that he was starting to get used to it. He wandered through the palace gardens, hands shoved deep into his pockets, trying not to think too hard about his life choices. The gardens, at least, were a good distraction. They weren't like anything he'd seen on Earth. Towering trees with crystalline leaves that shimmered in pastel colors, flowers that seemed to hum softly as he passed, and vines that moved a little too deliberately for his comfort, like they were considering whether or not he'd make a good snack. Nice place, he muttered to a particularly large blue flower that looked like a sunflower designed by a sci-fi concept artist. I got to say, your Planet really leans into the alien paradise aesthetic. All you're missing is a gift shop. The flower emitted a low, warbling hum in response. Jack wasn't sure whether that minute agreed with him, or was just annoyed by his voice. You know, he continued mostly to keep himself from spiraling into existential panic back home. I used to play dive bars, where the only decoration was a neon beer sign that flickered like it had emotional problems. This is a pretty big upgrade. Jack Nolan, he jumped so hard he nearly tripped over his own feet. Saw was standing a few feet away watching him with that quiet amusement. She seemed to specialize in "do you always sneak up on people like that, or am I just special?" Jack asked, putting a hand over his chest. "Because I'm pretty sure my heart just tried to escape through my ribs." Saria tilted her head, her silver hair catching the light. "You speak to the plants?" Jack blinked. "Oh yeah, I guess I do that. When I'm nervous or bored, or accidentally married to an alien queen." And trying not to freak out about it, Sa stepped closer, her long ears twitching slightly. Jack was starting to pick up on that, the way her ears moved with her mood. He was pretty sure this twitch meant curious rather than angry, which was reassuring. "They listen," she said softly, glancing at the flower. "He'd been talking to our gardens are alive in more ways than one. The flora shares a kind of collective awareness. They recognize voices, they remember kindness." Jack stared at the flower, then back at her. "Wait, are you telling me I just made friends with the sentient sunflower?" Sarah's lips quirked into a smile. "Perhaps." Jack squinted at the flower. "If this thing starts giving me life advice, I'm out." Saw laughed, and Jack felt that now familiar flip in his chest, the one that made him feel like he was a teenager with a crush all over again. He cleared his throat awkwardly. "How'd the council meeting go? Did they decide whether I'm getting exiled, executed, or promoted to royal arm candy yet?" Her smile faded, and Jack immediately regretted the joke. "They are divided," she said quietly. "Some believe the bond is a gift, a sign that change is needed. Others see it as a threat to our traditions." Jack ran a hand through his hair. "Yeah, the tracks. Nobody ever reacts to me with he's fine. It's always this guy's great, or please get him off my planet." Sa stepped closer, her voice quieter. Now, I do not believe you are a threat, Jack Nolan. But they will test you, they must be certain." Jack blinked. "Test me? What, like a pop quiz? Because I got to warn you, I barely passed high school." She didn't laugh this time. "There is a trial. It is an ancient right away for outsiders to prove they are worthy of standing beside the queen." Jack's stomach dropped. "Oh, of course. There's a trial because this wasn't complicated enough already. You will not face it alone," Sa said softly. "I will stand with you." Jack looked at her for a moment, then exhaled sharply, forcing a grin. "Well, that's good. Because I'm about 70% sure I'm going to need someone to pull me out of whatever pit, arena, or death maze they throw me into." Sa smiled again, but it didn't quite reach her eyes this time. Jack sighed, running a hand through his hair again. "Okay, fine, ancient trial, got it. Let's do this." He glanced back at the humming flower. "Hey, plant buddy, wish me luck." The flower made a noise that sounded suspiciously like a sympathetic grow. "Yeah." Jack muttered. "Me too." The trial grounds were not what Jack expected. He'd been mentally preparing for something out of a gladiator movie. Roaring crowds, flaming pillars, maybe a giant alien beast with too many teeth, and not enough personal space boundaries. Instead, he found himself standing in what looked like an enormous glass amphitheater, open to the sky. The floor beneath him shimmered, shifting between metallic silver and deep blue, like an ocean trapped under the surface. It wasn't exactly comforting. He glanced sideways at Sa. She stood tall and calm beside him, her silver hair catching the sunlight. Her long ears twitched, the nervous twitch this time, though her face stayed perfectly composed. Jack figured she had to be at least a little worried, or maybe she was just worried that he was going to do something catastrophically stupid. Honestly, fair assumption. So Jack muttered, leaning toward her, "Do I get a heads up on what this trial involves, or are we going full surprise? You're fighting a lava shark mode." Sarah's lips twitched, not quite a smile, but close. "It is not a battle, Jack." Jack raised a brow. "Yeah, well, that's disappointing. I was really hoping to die In a blaze of poorly thought-out glory, her voice softened. It is a trial of truth. The Velian way values honesty of self, and of intention the arena will. Test what lies within you. Jack frowned. That sounds alarmingly poetic, can I? Bribe it with snacks. Saw actually laugh this time, a quiet melodic sound that made Jack feel like he just won a small personal victory. A booming voice interrupted them, echoing through the amphitheater. Jack glanced up to see Dale, standing on a high platform, looking every bit like a man who wished he were anywhere else. The outsider Jack Nolan will face the trial of the veil. Veil, Jack muttered. Why does it sound like I'm about to get haunted by a Victorian ghost? Bride Saw leaned in her voice barely above a whisper. Stay true to who you are. The veil reflects what is hidden. It will not harm you unless you fight it. Not super reassuring, Jack admitted. A low hum began to vibrate through the arena, and the shimmer-eing floor beneath him shifted again, this time parting like water rippling away from his feet. Lights swirled up from the ground, rising in slow curling tendrils. Jack squinted against the brightness. The light shifted, twisted, and then it wasn't light anymore. It was him or something that looked like him. The figure standing in front of Jack wasn't a perfect copy. It was taller, leaner, with sharper edges. Its eyes glowed a pale, icy blue, and the grin it wore was far too confident to belong to the real Jack. Nolan, oh, come on, Jack groaned. An evil doppelganger, really? That's like sci-fi cliché. Number 4, the doppelganger tilted its head, studying him. Then it spoke in Jack's voice, but smoother. Colder. Is that all? You are a joke? Jack blinked. Well, yeah, humor's kind of my whole thing. Keeps me from screaming into the void. The copy stepped closer. You